afternoon, and welcome all the distinguished guests here. My name is Darryl. I'm the president of the Canmore Eagles. The Canmore Eagles have been an integral part of the culture of the Bull Valley for the past 25 years. However, the operations of a small community hockey club is fiscally challenging. Our peers have budgets that are 2 and 3 times ours, and yet because of the spirit of our team and its valuable volunteers, we compete effectively. When conversations started with SustainDriven, it started with, what would it take to compete with the best in Alberta and in Canada? The answer is an increased budget. However, we are an amazing community with regular world-class events and organizations, so the competition for partnerships is challenging. With rapid awareness of the world's climate crisis and the town declaring climate emergency, the opportunity to become a climate leader presented itself. There are 2 aspects to this initiative. Step 1, the steps to become the greenest hockey club in the world to meet the United Nations call for sectorial partnerships under their Sport for Climate Action. Number 2, to launch new partnership opportunities to supply the resources to activate the sustainable programs that supply additional support for hockey operations. Therefore, I wish to announce on behalf of the Canmore Eagles that we are the first organization in the Bull Valley to declare the alliance with the town of Canmore in their climate emergency. Thank you, and I'll take questions after each speaker is finished.
Cool. Hi folks, thanks for coming. All right, Mayor Borrowman, thanks for being here. President Lockwood, media, wonderful. You heard a little bit about the what and the why. I'd like to talk a little bit about the how we're going to do this. First, though, the United Nations, the International Panel on Climate Change, the Government of Canada, and even the town of Canmore have all declared climate emergencies. If you know anything about the world's carbon budget, you appreciate the sense of urgency that some of us who are in this world feel. So how can a small market hockey club affect change? We can become the leaders by doing the right thing and then telling the story widely. We have around 6 million visitors to the Bull Valley annually, and we can tell the story to those people. Hockey in Canada has a special place in the culture, and we hope to start telling the story locally, then regionally, provincially, and then nationally. And our hope is that this model will be adopted vertically through the AJHL to Hockey Canada, and perhaps all the way to the NHL. This will only work if the story is compelling. We need to link the right steps and actions in order, with a successful funding campaign, and I'm going to explain that in a moment, for this to gain the traction necessary for meaningful change. But first, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The UN Sports for Climate Action framework principles that we're going to be aligning with. 1, undertake systematic efforts to promote greater environmental responsibility. 2 is reduce overall climate impact. 3 is educate for climate action. 4 is promote sustainable and responsible consumerism. And 5 is advocate for climate action through communication. So that comes from the United Nations. And within their Sport for Climate Action subsector. So members are encouraged to follow guidance and recommendations, etc. So I'm going, as an example, to London next month to their very first Sport for Climate Action meeting on behalf of the Bull Valley and the enterprises that I represent, to try to convey information to them that we're doing what we're doing, and also to gather best practices to bring back to the Bull Valley. Our goal for the Eagles is to become the first hockey club in the world to be accepted by the IPCC under their sectorial call, the Sport for Climate Action. And interestingly, we're in a race with Minnesota Wild for this. They're the only other hockey club that have it on their website. Wonder who will get there first. Okay, so what are we doing? Green energy is next. So first is carbon measurement, carbon mitigation, carbon offsets, GHGs. Next is green energy. Towards zero waste is the most visible action that many of you are familiar with at various events, and we're going to be doing that here. And then education and engagement is important. One of our early goals is to get the 25 athletes that are members of the club to become eco-warriors that are fully educated in all the steps and the reason why we're doing things. Our timing plans are to spend the spring and summer to build all the models, start the program with the new hockey season in August, do all of these actions in the fall, and in January apply for the United Nations Sectorial Partnership. There you go.
So from a community standpoint, for the Canmore Eagles, this is a huge endeavor for us to take on, but one we're very proud to take on. Our athletes are in the schools every single Wednesday volunteering and reading in the classroom, so we see this as another prong that we can add to, whether it's with our athletes learning as well as teaching others. So we're going to use our partnerships with minor hockey, the school systems to educate and as well promote within our organization and our other partners, whether that's our bar partners, our food and beverage partners. This is something that we believe we can be leaders in, and one of the first sports organizations to do so, especially in the Bow Valley. And for the Canmore Eagles, we feel, because we're a nonprofit community-owned team, that is very important to us and our team's mandate, and it's just another aspect that we haven't been involved in that we can now step to be involved in. So in terms of, for anyone who's not familiar with our leadership in the community, our team has been involved with the Harmony Project, so our players have been educated on consent and what that means in society, what that means as athletes, what that means as leaders in our community, and how they handle themselves and how they educate others. Our first time this year, we partnered with Banff Pride. So we were one of the first teams in AJHL to have a Pride game with Banff Pride, and that's something that we believe was important, not only to host an event, but be involved. So the same with this green initiative, it's not to just say we're going green, but it's to help build that out wide. And so even with, for example, the Banff Pride, our players were involved in the Banff community, volunteering for that event as a give back, as well as hosting the event. So I think the first thing that comes to people's mind is it's just a marketing ploy, is it's just something that's flashy because it's in the view of people's eyes now, and that's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to make a difference, we want to educate, and we'd like to do what we can to better this Bow Valley community. And I'm going to pass it off to Andrew for the hockey operations side of things.
We want to be leaders, and we want to learn that in doing that, we know there's going to be initial costs and different things on the budgeting side, but we think there's an opportunity to become sustainable with some help from partners in this to become the greenest team in not only the AJHL, but moving further than that, outside of that. And we think that with the competitive nature that hockey brings, and it's Canadians' pastime, that we can become leaders, and then we can become, challenging other groups within our organization, within our league, within our Western provinces, and then within our country to see what they can do. And we're excited about that. The one angle that Joey can attest to is there's a competitive nature behind this. And if we are racing the Minnesota Wild, then so be it. We're not going to play them on the ice, but hopefully we can beat them to become the first team and the greenest team there is in hockey. So, thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me to be here, Darryl and Joy and the others. This is it's really came out of nowhere for me. It was quite a surprise. Everybody knows that the town of Canmore has, as been noted, declared a climate emergency some time ago. So our council and administration take this challenge very seriously. We're one of the few communities in the province that have acknowledged the seriousness of the climate situation. But we join hundreds, if not thousands, of other small communities in the country and around the world. So more importantly than making the declaration, the town of Canmore has approved a very comprehensive and well-considered climate action plan that lays out a number of things that we can do as a community, both as the municipal government and within the community at large, to reach our targets, which are, I'll be honest, quite aggressive targets in order to address the challenge. We can't do that alone as a municipal government. We need the community to join in. And this is so encouraging and exciting to see the local hockey team, the Canmore Eagles, stepping out being the first to step up in the community and say, we recognize this as a serious issue, and we want to take a part in moving at least our community forward and addressing the larger challenges. The fact that the Eagles are a youth-oriented organization, we all know that it's the next generation that really is, to a large extent, leading these conversations globally, and to have the Eagles as the ambassadors within our community to encourage the rest of the community to do what we can to address the effects of climate change. To have the Eagles out there doing that work I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that, Darryl, and Joy, and Andrew. It's really great news. Kudos to the Eagles. I'll look forward to seeing how this rolls out. I'm sure that our climate action people in the town will be quite happy to be working with you if you haven't connected already. So thanks very much for having me here, and congratulations.
Thank you for your support.
This is working?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Heather Gibb, and I'm with Bull Valley Climate Action. And we've been really happy to partner with the Bull Valley Clean Air Society, and how we'll be talking more particularly about our project. But first, I'd like to say a little bit about why we did this. The idling is not the most significant factor contributing to greenhouse gases. I think the town of Canmore and its greenhouse gas report, or sources of greenhouse gases, and things like the rec center and EP as being much more significant. However, idling, I think, is really important because it's something we all do. We all drive vehicles, and we all have an opportunity to think about our carbon footprint just by turning off our car when we're driving through and waiting at a Tim Hortons, for example, or waiting for the train to cross. So it's important. We were really happy to partner with the Eagles, and really appreciate the support we've had from Jacqueline and from Joy. It's a really wonderful opportunity to engage with a different sector, the youth sector, and we're happy to support the Eagles and also the town of Canmore and its implementing its climate action plan. It also allowed our two organizations to pilot a methodology that we kind of like to expand and try out in other parts of town. So this was a really good opportunity for us. Hal will talk about the results. They're a little bit surprising, and I'm quite happy about the way they turned out. I really just want to emphasize my feeling anyway, that individual actions are important. It can get kind of overwhelming, the size of the climate emergency, and kind of discouraging. I was shocked by the number of young women I've met in the last year or two who've decided not to have children because they're not very optimistic about the way the world is going, and that got me going. And it's been really excellent to find that there's support within the town and now support within the hockey team. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn this over to Hal.
Thanks, Heather. My name's Retzer, and I'm with the Bull Valley Clean Air Society. We call ourselves BVCAS. We've been around for almost 20 years. We're a fairly quiet organization in the valley. We spent probably most of our effort working with industry in the valley, trying to ensure that the air in the Bull Valley remains clean and continues to remain clean and gets better over time. So when we were invited to be part of this group with Eagles, we also embraced it very enthusiastically. We tried to do an anti-idling program for many years and have done various ones over the years. But this is a great opportunity to showcase what an anti-idling campaign might look like. And like Kevin says, our plan is to sort of repeat what we did with Eagles in other locations. So a little bit of information. We did 4 games in February, and between the Bull Valley Climate Action Group and the Bull Valley Clean Air Society, we had volunteers out in the parking lot. Those who came to the game might have seen us out there with clipboards. And all we're doing is logging if there's any vehicle driving. And pretty simple exercise, and we weren't trying to be intrusive. It was mostly a data gathering effort. So here's some of the results that we got. There was roughly in the course of 4 games, we had about 62 vehicles that actually idled. Of those 62 vehicles, not the majority, but about 15 vehicles were typically idling less than 30 seconds. There were a few idlers that went on for quite routinely for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and there was a few that vehicles running for 20 minutes to half an hour. Again, most of the data gathering exercises, we weren't trying to correct anybody's behavior, but it was just really good to gather that sort of information. So over the 4 games that we observed, there was roughly about 13% of all vehicles that came to the parking lot idle for that sort of time period at all in that time period. Anything over 10 seconds we logged. Total idling time, or the average idling time for all the vehicles, or the vehicles that idle was about 3 minutes on average. But again, there were many that were lower, but there were some people that had gone quite a bit longer. So the average idle time was about 3 minutes. I guess some of the bad apples that we saw in the group were some of the, in one case, a visiting coach, visiting team's bus had the vehicle idling for most of the game, actually, for most of the time leading up to the game. But then you can't overlook the fact that 85% of the people or more didn't idle, which is really great to see. The other stat that we kind of observed was the total number of vehicles in the parking lot and how many kilometers on average all the vehicles cumulatively drove. And what this really points to is the need for people to carpool, the need for people to take transit, the need for people to take their walk or take a bike to the games, because the number was significant. The total driving distance that people did on average, or the total cumulative, was like driving from Canmore to Vancouver. So every game, it's like somebody getting in their car and driving to Vancouver. So a significant number of kilometers get driven to attend every game. So it's really great, and one was it's really great to see the Eagles are trying to do something that will reduce the carbon footprint, and we encourage that. And so these are little stats that we'll use, and we'll have to share them with the organization, and we'll use the information and methodology for other locations around town. So thank you very much.
Hey, we look forward to a all in good fun Eco Ambassadors competition between the Eagles and the Wild.
Eagles in the what?
Minnesota Wild. Minnesota Wild, yeah.
Sure.
That sounds like a really good
If you're
thing to put out
competing,
there.
compete.
Yeah.
Challenge.
Yeah,
It's for a good cause.
yeah. Good idea.
We think we have a good in already with the NHL. And Andrew Ferentz, who some people may know, lived in town for a lot of years. He's a very big advocate of movement, and he is now working for the National Hockey League. He's retired from hockey, and is working for the National Hockey League. And so we do have, at some point we're going to have an ally to Canmore that's working right at the very top of the National League. So it's something we're pretty excited about. And I know Andrew will jump on board with this as soon as we can, as soon as we need him to. Put it that way. We have that ace in the hole when we need it.
Let me lay this out for you guys, and if you can give us connections in the right direction, we would really appreciate this. You heard me talk about how in order for this thing to really grow organically through hockey across Canada, it's not just good enough to be sustainable, there has to be more resources for hockey operation. And so we're looking at trying to split. Some money comes in for sustainability projects and some falls onto hockey operations side so they can do a better job and compete more effectively. We need 5 partners at between $10,000 and $20,000 to really launch this thing. If you guys can give us help getting in that direction, we would really appreciate it.
Joy, can you just expand a little bit on budget and what your hopes are in terms of acquiring funding and then having it spring?
Okay, excellent question. So acquiring the funding, I'm doing a SIP grant application right now. If you're not familiar, that's a Community Initiatives Program. Applications have been made to the BCCF and to the
Community Foundation.
Yes, I use acronyms too much. Thank you. Canmore Community Foundation and Rotary Canmore. With a foundational amount of money, we begin to create the framework. There's educational modules for the athletes that need to be created. There's a fair amount of communication platforms that need to be created because, for instance, you have 4 social media platforms. 5 or 4. Well, you have to feed the monster. So you have to build stories. You have to create stories that run out regularly on social media. From an education perspective, an awful lot of young people come to this facility. So you can imagine storytelling that's occurring in dressing rooms and in lobbies and other things, identifying steps that are being taken and actions, and then equating it down to either GHG footprints or distance traveled or some metric that people can understand. And so there's a series of communications. The first is we have to do the right thing. We have to get to the right point. The next is we need to actually start telling the story within this facility. Then the next stage beyond that is to tell the story beyond this facility using social media platforms or challenges to the Minnesota Wild that the media pick up on, or other things that gain traction. It would be the hopes, having spent, like most of us, time traveling to these tiny communities in Alberta, where you go and you realize that they have a single waste bin and everything gets mixed waste. It would be the hope that organizations like the Alberta Beverage Container Recycling Corporation get on board with us with communications to all of these other rinks throughout Alberta, that they can develop waste streaming like that. So those are small examples. Peter challenged me recently with waste that's going into all of the blue bins, the bottles, and the distance that they travel to come back here as sandblasting sand. And I appreciate the challenge because I'm trying to actually, I think we have something going now to eliminate that, to actually have the bottles come here. So instead of us doing bottle drives, the athletes come here with the bottles, and then they go up to the depot instead of going into the blue bins where they end up coming back as a low-grade material. So those are examples of projects we're working on. It's not the only ones, because as opportunities present themselves, we jump on. Does that help color in the lines about the sort of stuff we'd like to do?
Comes to mind is we could lower the shower temperature for the men's showers. No more hot water, and you save a lot of energy there, right? You can all take cold showers. That's one way we could do it.
So the coach gives off a lot of hot air, maybe. Great, capture that.
You know, it would be great, for instance, to find enough resources to have the Towards Zero Waste trailer here for every home game and have a either volunteer or a paid group think about those bottles and how they could fund, you know. And instead of having these mixed waste bins, there's Towards Zero Waste sitting at that end or that end, and we actually do the same job as, let's say, the Folk Fest does. And that requires resources to accomplish, but it would be a great thing to do.
Yeah. I would assume, I'll ask when I get back to the offices, but when we roll out the commercial waste composting bins, it would be nice if there was one in this facility to collect compost from all of it.
Exactly.
Home games and all.
Yeah, and then there's working with the food purveyor here to make sure that everything that comes out is compostable. You know, as much as I hate to say it, I was showing earlier today, that cup has a plastic liner. And unfortunately, that means it becomes garbage. And so having compostable products in our food service here might be a fiscal hit. So maybe what we need to do is supplement it for a couple $100 to give them products that are 100% compostable, so they end up in the compost stream.
Mm-hmm. Or encourage, locally made single-use or multiple-use coffee cups. Karen?
John, I know someone who makes those.
Yes. Yes.
Chair, I have a question. Since you are bringing teams here from other communities, you have networks. You obviously have the hockey network that you can communicate through. Is there a potential for you to bring the other teams up to our standards by sharing the information that we have learned? Because we're doing that in a lot of ways, but then they come here and they're not familiar with our standard, but we could actually create that standard and circulate that.
Right on. That's sort of phase 2, the communications. That's whether it be signage in the dressing rooms and stories in the dressing rooms or in the lobbies or wherever, and then all of the social media feeds. As Andrew identified, the young guys, the young athletes, male and female, they are quick to gather, to jump on this. So they're our leaders. They're the ones. But we have to give them the tools. Everybody wants to do better. But many times they don't know exactly what to do better. So we need to showcase that. But if I go to the sort of the 10,000 foot level, you could eliminate this entire contiguous zone from Scott Lake Hill to the headwaters in Lake Louise off the planet of the Earth and have no effect on the world's climate crisis. What we do have is we have about 6 million tourists that come into this valley annually. That maybe we can educate them and tell them the stories and have them bring that information back to wherever they're from. Then maybe over time we'll have an effect.
And I can add to that. This year, actually, we're hosting the Alberta Junior Hockey League's annual meeting here in Canmore in May. So we are bringing all the members into Canmore. And we're utilizing that as an opportunity, we think, on a lot of levels. One is, just like you said, maybe bring them up to some standards that we think, maybe doesn't occur in some of the other communities, whether Drumheller's there or not. But we want to bring them in and have them here. And I think just having that group here is going to do exactly what Joey says, educate that group and have that group see things that we're doing. And we do get that, I'm anticipating after tonight, we're going to get some feedback from the other members. And then we may have an opportunity for an education period with all the other teams in town here to sort of start that. And the challenges are going to come up. Hockey's competitive. So I think that's one thing to win on the ice. We'll be making sure we offer competitive challenges off the ice too.
So I just expand on that. I know at the AJHL meeting, talking to our commissioner, he asked if there'd be a benefit of having maybe somebody from the town join at some period of time with the meetings, and or have a team, somebody from each town, administration or council, come to the meetings as well and have that. So we may have that moving forward as well, which I think would be really beneficial, because ultimately too, we want to take this from here to the AJHL. We've got another 15 partners throughout the province, so our reach is pretty wide then also.
Do you have any targets for what you want to achieve in some of the initiatives you're doing in the next year or two?
Right on. Excellent question. Our goal is to be first. First with the IPCC, International Panel for Climate Change. Thank you. Too many acronyms in my life. In their Sport for Climate Action call for partnership. So we succeeded in doing that with the Banff Marathon. So I think I have a pretty clear understanding of how to get to that standard. They're primarily focused on greenhouse gas measurement, mitigation, and offset. So that's the elephant. If you don't touch that, they're not interested in it. So we need to focus on that. So the measurement process is actually relatively easy. I was in fact teaching the green team at OLS High School how to do that about a month ago. And at the end of it, the kids all went, "Really? That's it?" I go, "Yeah, that's it." They calculated the GHG footprint of the high school for a year. The next step would be mitigation. Well, the municipality spends a lot of money and a lot of effort on reducing energy consumption in these buildings through the renos that have happened. So maybe there's not a big piece of room there to affect change. But maybe the next step is the offsets. So the offsets can be accomplished two different ways. One is you bring in a partner that has a whole bunch of legacy credits. We use that Walker Environmental in Banff quite a bit. Or maybe it's something really simple like Trees Canada, where you could buy a tree with Trees Canada for $6. And it sequesters 20 tons of carbon over its lifespan. And they have a CSA protocol, so it's not like winging it. They actually are real. They have a CSA protocol for doing that in those locations. So maybe what we do is we encourage all of the people to come to once a year buy a tree, which would more than offset their GHG footprint of coming to the rink. So that's one step. Now let's talk about energy. If the municipality was 100% green energy, it would have that box checked. If it's not, then we need to understand what the blend is of green versus otherwise. And there are partners I use like Bow Valley Power that are eager to exchange green credits for marketing value. So we need to give them good marketing value if they come in as a partner giving us green credits for energy. Next would be the most visible thing, which is towards zero waste. So imagine if every home game had TZW stations at either end down there and sorting, and there was some method whereby it became worthwhile. So perhaps there's money that goes to these clubs who man these TZW stations or something. And there's also a cost to the Waste Commission to bring the trailer here and to deal with the mess afterwards. Then you've got education and engagement. And that comes creating stories that they can push out on their social media platforms, signage inside these buildings. I'm repeating myself. Those are the distinct steps that we would attempt to happen. And then stuff comes out of the blue.